The first few seasons of Dexter are fantastic seasons of television. They contain outlandish scenarios but are also rooted in logic, striking that perfect balance of drama and realism, which is precisely what I want from a series centered around crime. Although great, seasons 1 to 3 all followed the same format. Dexter would kill a bunch of people with his ritual, people who slipped through the cracks of the criminal justice system. Dexter would then meet someone who related to or understood his code. But after a while, Dexter would deem them to be worse than him, and so they too would end up on his table.
It doesn't have to come to this.
But it always does.
Season 4 has a similar structure, but the finale took a huge risk. And said risk paid off because the episode ended up becoming the fan favourite and up there as one of the best season finales of all time. So, get comfortable. We have a lot to examine. Season 4 begins with Dexter going through a very unfamiliar phase in his life. He is now a married man with children. This is what most men want in life, but unfortunately Dexter does not represent most men. And because of his struggle with change, he is now getting crucial things wrong at work. His kill ritual is becoming very sloppy. And ultimately, he now has a bad work-life serial killer balance. Meanwhile, there is a new killer in town, Arthur Mitchell.
I call him the Trinity Killer. Kills in threes. Problem is, I can't prove he exists.
The house and room where Lisa Bell was murdered was the site of a very similar homicide 30 years ago.
He's back where his killing began. You know what this means?
Trinity's the most successful serial killer to ever get away with it.
Like Dexter, Trinity has a code of his own. A young woman is cut open in a bathtub, reflecting what happened to Arthur's sister. A woman is then forced to jump to her death, reflecting what happened to Arthur's mother. And finally, a man is bludgeoned to death, reflecting what happened to Arthur's father. What Lundy missed, however, is that there are 4 phases to this cycle, starting with a 10-year-old boy being buried under concrete to preserve his innocence, reflecting Arthur himself at that age. The Quadrinity is strict to his code. And it's worth noting that he does not take pleasure in what he does. This is something he does out of a sense of obligation. In fact, for a man who's been killing for decades now, it is surprising that he can't even bring himself to put a deer out of its misery.
He spent his life killing innocent people, but he can't kill Bambi?
Arthur is a terrible person, but he was once a young, innocent boy that needed serious help. Not a killing code. This is one of many reasons why he comes across as an older Dexter. And when Dexter sees that Arthur appears to be living a very happy and balanced life, he puts off killing him as he feels there is much to learn. But the closer Dexter gets, the more he realizes that Arthur's family has been severely abused. Trinity has very quickly gone from a potential role model for Dexter to someone he fears he may become. Arthur was convinced by Dexter's acting for a very long time, but eventually he catches on. With this, Trinity pulls a very Dextery tactic by baiting him to an arcade and then following him to his next destination. That destination being the Miami Metro Police Department, and now he is aware of the true identity of Dexter.
Hello, Dexter Morgan.
Panic is setting in for Dexter.
What the hell have I done?
There are multiple turning Dutch angle shots representing the many confused and tangled thoughts inside Dexter's mind. Trinity threatens Dexter and states that he should leave him alone.
I couldn't care less about your life or death, unless you get in my way.
Dex tries to play things cool, and once Arthur exits the building, he grabs a syringe and chases after him. But there are some obstacles in Dexter's way. First is Joey Quinn, who is after a blood report. The sequence of Dexter chasing after Trinity is superb at giving the feeling of a ticking time bomb. The series is very clever with how it utilizes both music and editing to influence the pacing of a scene. Take the opening of Season 1 Episode 1 as an example. The rather ominous soundtrack plays in the background as Dexter cruises around in his car, scouting out his next victim, accompanied with pauses in between Michael C. Hall's voiceover.
Miami is a great town. I love the Cuban food. Pork sandwiches, my favorite.
This man is in no rush. He is in full control. A chase scene such as this has the complete opposite feel to it, with fast-paced music that escalates as Dexter is speeding up whilst on the phone to Rita, and whenever it cuts over to her, the music abruptly stops, making Dexter's drastically different setting feel even more stressful.
I think it's fantastic.
Great. I'll start booking flights and hotel and...
Gotta go!
The series up till this point has been extremely consistent with cause and effect. Things almost always go wrong for Dexter when he has to rush. Utilizing tools in post-production to create this effect is essential, but the context of the scene is also very important. In Season 1, he didn't have time to properly slice up a body, and so said body makes a return and is picked up by Miami Metro. And there was a sloppy kill earlier this season, which he was only able to clean up because the kill room was in an abandoned building. All of this gives us a clear understanding for when Dexter is in control, and it also feels like a lot is achieved when he is in a tricky situation but comes out victorious. Anyway, he follows Trinity to a car park. Trinity goes into a bank, and when he returns, Dexter manages to get him.
Luck is finally working with me.
But unfortunately, as he opens the door, he sees the driver whose wing mirror he hit. Worst of all, he is talking to the police and showing them Dexter's vehicle. So Dex approaches and uses the fact he works for Miami Metro in an attempt to excuse the damage he caused with his dangerous and reckless driving. However, this does not go over too well and he loses his temper. He has now ended up in a police cell.
Why are you even in here?
Because of Arthur fucking Mitchell. Wrong.
As we've seen already in this episode, Ghost Harry always highlights Dexter's mistakes, and I find these kind of scenes to be very well written. Despite them being obvious exposition dumps, they are executed in a way that feels natural within the context of the series. Harry was the voice of reason for Dexter when he was younger. Nowadays, these are technically Dexter's thoughts coming from Harry, but it works because Dexter is a complicated individual and has a tough time juggling logic and emotion. He's now assigned the more logical part of his brain to Harry. Just like in Mr. Robot, it is a way for our protagonist to feel connected to someone. It feels like their secret is no longer being stored inside and eating away at them. Anyway, the sheriff's department ended up phoning Rita and asked her to come and pick up her husband. Rita drops off Dex by his car and then he makes a dash over to Trinity's van, only to discover that he is no longer there. We then cut over to Arthur at the family home. He is requesting they hand over all jewelry and money so that he can afford a getaway. Dex, on the other hand, sends Rita and the kids away to ensure they are safe. These two are desperately trying to track each other down, but now Miami Metro is about to close in with some excellent detective work from Deborah Morgan. So whilst Dexter is at the Mitchell's home attempting to get some answers, a SWAT team arrives. Dex hides in the garage momentarily and is then in the clear by showing his forensics badge. Now, this episode is fantastic, but I think this is the weakest part. Dexter does not have any reason to be here. Even once the situation is under control, he likely wouldn't be called in anyway as there is no blood at the scene.
Why are you here?
It's a crime scene?
Yeah, but you do blood spatter.
So?
So? There's no blood here.
In the episode Born Free, Dexter was at the crime scene before anyone else, but there it made a lot more sense. Dex was claiming the ice truck killer requested him to come alone or Deb would die, and was also challenged by Sergeant Dokes, who of course didn't believe him. In the Getaway, it is waved off a bit too quickly.
How'd you get here so fast?
As Arthur's family is removed from the house, there is effective editing to show a parallel to Dexter's potential future, accompanied with what I would argue to be the most important lines in this episode.
This is their future, Dexter. We both know it's inevitable. You'll always need someone on your table. If you stay, sooner or later you'll be caught and they'll pay a terrible price for what you've done.
So in between all the drama with Trinity, Deb has been searching for answers as to who her father was having an affair with. She puts all the pieces together and discovers the woman in question was Laura Moser, Dexter's mother and the ice truck killer's mother. Deb tries to speak to Dexter about this, and at first, he believes she has discovered his secrets.
I found another CI Dad was sleeping with. A woman named Laura Moser.
This is it.
Does that name mean anything to you?
Should it?
She left behind 2 little boys, and one of those little boys was you. The other little boy, your brother, was named Brian, the ice truck killer.
And that's all she knows? He must have glommed onto you as a way to get to me. If I'd never been in your life.
Fuck you. If you hadn't been in my life, I wouldn't be who I am.
I've been good for her. And Rita says I'm good for her and the kids. No one would ever say that about Arthur.
After that exchange, Dex spots a broken windshield, and figures that Trinity is using his son's Mustang as a getaway vehicle. So whilst the car is at a repair shop, Dex removes the oil cap. So when it inevitably comes to a halt, he has a perfect opportunity to strike. Finally, the Trinity killer is on his table. A familiar sight, but this scene feels different.
I was following my path.
So was I.
God led you to me.
Ta-da!
I never took pride in what I did.
No, you're a very special kind of monster. You destroyed your own family.
I gave them everything.
I can't believe there was a time I actually thought I could learn something from you.
You think you're better than I am?
No, but I want to be.
You can't control the demon inside of you any more than I could control mine.
Did you ever actually try?
I prayed to be changed.
That's waiting to be stopped.
It worked, didn't it?
So what's the alternative, Arthur? Fake my own death and start over again?
No. You'll still be you. You dream of a heaven you'll never see.
I don't believe in heaven.
Oh, but you do. This isn't your doing. This is God's plan. I accept that now. It's already over.
Arthur is a lot more content than most of Dexter's previous victims, and even says the line he used to tell his own victims.
It's already over. Now it's over.
Just like that, he's done it again. Another season, another villain taken care of. Dexter goes out on his boat, which is hilariously called a slice of life, and dumps Arthur's body parts in the ocean. He gets home and is feeling very optimistic about the future. He listens to a voicemail from Rita stating that she forgot ID and had to return home. Dexter calls back but finds out that her phone is still at home. As Dexter walks into the bathroom, he turns on the light and sees his son sitting on the floor in a pool of blood, with Rita dead in the bathtub. Harrison is Dexter, the traumatized victim. Rita is Laura, the deceased victim. Dexter is Harry, the man who could have prevented all of this from happening. A tragic end to the episode, but a brilliant ending for the season.
This is fate.
I love Dexter, and The Getaway is what I would argue to be the best episode for many reasons. One of the biggest being its clear understanding of the character. Most of the people Dexter killed throughout the first 4 seasons were far from innocent. But what Dex was doing was still not a good thing. These kills were feeding into his selfish desires first and foremost, and doing it for the victims was secondary. I believe this idea is exemplified in Season 4 with Dexter's reluctancy to kill Trinity right away. At this point, it is believed that Arthur was the one who shot Deb and killed Lundy. Even with this knowledge, Dex holds back. One of the most eerie scenes to watch with hindsight is when Arthur tries jumping to his death and Dexter saves him because he just has to be the one to kill him.
This isn't how you die.
Why keep him alive just to kill him? But as long as it's by my hand.
Gotcha!
If Dexter had let him take his own life, Trinity would no longer be a threat and Rita would still be alive. I believe his kill ritual is the most telling part, that he gets a kick out of what he does. Killing Arthur or anyone prior in an instant means that any future victims are not harmed. The outcome is the same. The plastic serves a practical purpose of not leaving any blood behind at the scene. But ensuring the person he is about to kill is awake, showing them pictures of the victims, and utilising a special weapon to kill them is completely unnecessary. The writers understood the morality surrounding this, and to show how it works both ways, they took a huge risk with the death of Rita, a beloved character since the beginning. Although upsetting to watch, her death manages to be both surprising and also a logical outcome. She was abused by her previous husband and needed to live the rest of her life with a good man. Dexter appears to be that good man, and even though he would never hurt her, it was wrong for him to be in that relationship as it put her and the kids in danger.
I'll make time for my dark passenger and for Rita.
It's about priorities, Dexter.
It's only a matter of time before you hurt someone else. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about your sister or your girlfriend or even those kids.
I would never.
No, not on purpose. But you can't control that shit that's growing inside of you, Morgan. It's like cancer. And in case you haven't noticed, it's spreading.
In a piece of media such as Gladiator, the death of our protagonist's family is used to drive the story. The rest of the film is him getting revenge, and we root for him throughout. The structure of Dexter is somewhat flipped. The character functions very differently for the story because he is a monster. In this case, it's not his family being harmed that motivates what he does next. It was what he was doing that led to his family being harmed. One could easily consider him evil. It was just debated amongst characters as to whether or not he was a necessary evil. Rita's mother, of all people, being someone in favour of the Bay Harbor Butcher.
Well, if what I've heard is true, that he only goes after criminals, I say leave him alone. He's got my seal of approval.
Of course, when she said this, she was oblivious to the fact he was in the same room as her, let alone that her daughter would indirectly be a victim of his actions. Dexter is not a man who fears death. Therefore, Trinity killing him would not be anywhere near as effective for the story. Rita and the kids were the light in his dark world. Them being harmed is one of few ways to punish Dex for his sins. It's not surprising that years later, Dexter would frequently be compared to Breaking Bad, both series containing a main character who is selfishly driven. They do kill bad people, but they themselves are bad and their families have to pay the price as a result. And what both series do superbly is not rushing to these climactic episodes. It means we witness these families that, yes, have a lot of issues throughout, but also have many happy moments. These characters got greedier until one day, almost out of nowhere, karma would catch up with them. On top of the writers understanding the morality of Dexter at this point, The Getaway is also cleverly structured in a way that we can only be so mad at Trinity. We see most things in this episode from Dexter's point of view, which means we have no knowledge that Rita is already dead when Trinity is on the table. Arthur's story is already over, so the motivation for revenge simply isn't there. What's horrifying for both Dexter and the audience is imagining how exactly the killing played out. Ultimately, Dexter is forced to learn that he can't have it both ways. He needed to choose between becoming a family man or remaining a killer. It was obvious when he looked into Arthur that it's not possible to balance both. The episode manages to wrap up the Trinity saga, Dexter's relevant past, and contain the ultimate consequence. The Getaway encompasses the brilliance of Dexter.